This defies all conventional understanding, declared first speaker Tulara, their bioluminescent patterns flickering with confusion. Dr. Rodriguez, can you explain your methodology? Sure, Isabella replied cheerfully. I treated it like trying to understand why my neighbor's cat keeps showing up in my apartment despite all doors being locked. Once you accept that some things just don't make sense, they start making perfect sense. The hall erupted in confused murmurs. A representative from the logical concordat stood up, their synthetic voice crackling with strain. But your approach violates every established problem-solving protocol. Exactly. Isabella beamed. That's why it worked. The labyrinth wasn't a puzzle to be solved. It was a conversation to be had. And sometimes the best conversations happen when you accidentally spill coffee on them. Kit Fricks, now officially appointed as the Archive's Human Understanding Specialist, watched as Isabella's explanation caused several highly logical species to require emergency meditation sessions. Consider this, Isabella continued, pulling up a diagram that somehow combined quantum mechanics with social media algorithms and pizza delivery routes. We've been treating the labyrinth like it's a lock that needs the right key. But what if it's more like a dance? You don't solve a dance. You just kind of go with it and try not to step on anyone's toes. The implications were staggering. Across the galaxy, research institutions began incorporating what they termed controlled chaos methodology into their studies. Some even started keeping coffee machines in their quantum labs, though most species found the beverage somewhere between toxic and terrifying. Paradigm shift. One galactic year after the coffee incident, the universe had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. The Galactic Archives had established a new department, the Institute of Human Chaos Theory, with Isabella as its reluctant director. I still don't get why this is such a big deal, she said during the opening ceremony, accidentally creating 3 new theoretical physics principles while trying to fix the holographic projector with a paperclip. Humans do this kind of thing all the time. We invented post-it notes by failing to make super strong glue. The impact of her discovery rippled through every field of study. The Silicon Sages began incorporating random variables into their quantum computers, calling it controlled unpredictability. The hivemind of Betelgeuse VRI started teaching its nodes to appreciate absurdity as a mathematical concept. Kit Fricks, reviewing the changes in their final report to the Council, noted, "The human approach to chaos has fundamentally altered our understanding of the universe. We sought perfect order in a cosmos that itself operates on principles of beautiful randomness." Isabella's methods had sparked a revolution in problem-solving across the galaxy. Species that had prided themselves on pure logic were now holding chaos workshops, where they deliberately approached problems from the most unlikely angles possible. The labyrinth itself had been retired to a special display in the archives, where it sat alongside a preserved cup of coffee and a simple plaque that read, "Sometimes the universe's greatest mysteries are solved not by those who seek answers, but by those who accidentally trip over them." During the final ceremony, marking the end of the archive's traditional approach to problem-solving, Isabella stood before the assembled galactic community, her hair as chaotic as her methods. "You know what this all reminds me of?" she said, gesturing to the gathered species representing the pinnacle of galactic civilization. "It's like when you lose something and can't find it until you stop looking for it. Sometimes the universe just wants us to relax a little, have some coffee, and let chaos do its thing." The first speaker, their crystalline form shimmering with newfound understanding, responded, "Perhaps that is the greatest lesson humans have taught us, that in a universe built on uncertainty principles, The most logical approach is to embrace uncertainty itself. Isabella grinned, already distracted by a new idea. Exactly. Now, has anyone ever wondered what would happen if we applied the principles of lost sock probability to wormhole physics? No. Just me? Well, get ready for another interesting day. As she banded off to her next adventure in chaos theory, Kithriks made their final entry in the archives records. In the end, perhaps the humans' greatest gift to the galaxy was not their solution to the labyrinth, but their demonstration that sometimes the path to understanding lies not in imposing order on chaos, but in learning to dance with it. The galaxy would never be the same. But then again, as humans were fond of saying, normality is just chaos taking a coffee break. Fascinating, she muttered, taking a sip of her coffee while comparing the labyrinth's structure to what appeared to be a social media network diagram. It's like it's deliberately overcomplicated itself. Like those terms and conditions nobody reads, but everyone agrees to. Kithriks found themselves drawn into her strange workflow, watching as she approached the infamous puzzle with what could only be described as a reverent curiosity. Where others had tried to impose order, she embraced chaos. Where they sought perfect solutions, she looked for good enough for government work, a phrase that made Kithriks's translator smoke slightly. As the first day drew to a close, Isabella had made more progress than most species managed in a month. The archivist's professional detachment was cracking. "Your methods are unprecedented," they admitted. "That's a polite way of saying I'm doing it wrong," Isabella laughed, stretching. "But sometimes wrong is exactly what you need. Did you know humans discovered one of our most important medicines because someone was bad at cleaning their lab equipment?" Kithriks left the chamber that evening with their worldview slightly tilted. Perhaps, they mused, watching Isabella pack up her seemingly random collection of tools, the galaxy had been approaching the labyrinth all wrong. Perhaps what was needed wasn't more logic, but less. The humans' parting words echoed in their mind. "See you tomorrow. Bringing donuts. Sugar helps the brain think sideways." For the first time in 700 years, Kithriks found themselves genuinely curious about what the next day would bring. The next morning, Kithriks arrived to find Isabella already at work, surrounded by an even more chaotic array of items than the day before. Holographic displays showed everything from cat videos to complex quantum calculations, while actual paper notes, were scattered across the floor in what she insisted was an organized mess. "You have to see this," Isabella called out, gesturing with a half-eaten donut. "I figured out why everyone's been stuck. They're all trying to solve the labyrinth like it's a puzzle, when really it's more like trying to organize a group chat for dinner plans." 3 of Kithriks's eye stalks twitched simultaneously. "I fail to see the correlation." "Think about it," she continued, pulling up multiple displays. "Everyone approaches the labyrinth trying to find the one perfect solution. But in a group chat, there is no perfect solution. There are just millions of possibilities all existing simultaneously until someone finally says, 'Fine, whatever, let's just get pizza.'" Word of Isabella's unusual methods had spread. The observation gallery, usually empty save for a few theoretical mathematicians, was now packed with representatives from various species. The Quantum Consciousness Collective of Rigel sent 3 of their highest functioning nodes. The Silicon Sages dispatched an emergency observation team. Even the notorious High Logician of Vega requested live data feeds. Isabella remained oblivious to her audience, too absorbed in what appeared to be comparing the labyrinth's quantum pathways to Earth's social media algorithms. "See, if we treat each quantum state like a Twitter thread that's gone off the rails," she muttered, drawing connections that made several highly educated observers need to lie down. Dr. Rodriguez interrupted a crystalline voice. A Rigelian observer had entered the chamber, their crystalline form vibrating with barely contained distress. Our analysis suggests your methodology violates 13 fundamental principles of quantum mechanics. Only 13. Isabella looked up, genuinely surprised. I must be having an off day. Usually, I'm up to at least 20 before lunch. She turned back to her work, adding, Did you know that human teenagers violate the laws of physics all the time? Ask any parent trying to get their kid up for school. The Rigelian's crystal structure clouded in confusion, but the mathematical principles are more like guidelines. Really, Isabella cut in, now comparing the labyrinth's structure to what appeared to be a map of her local shopping mall during a holiday sale. Sometimes you have to stop asking why and start asking why not. Kate Fricks watched as Isabella's apparent chaos began producing results that shouldn't have been possible. The labyrinth's inner layers, which had resisted conventional analysis for centuries, were responding to her seemingly random inputs. Where others had tried to map its structure, she was somehow convincing it to map itself. It's like trying to understand why cats knock things off tables, she explained to the increasingly bewildered audience. The moment you stop looking for logic, the pattern becomes clear. They do it because they can, and because chaos is its own reward. Her coffee cup, defying several laws of physics and probability, executed a perfect arc through the air, its contents creating a rainbow of quantum possibilities as it traveled. Time seemed to slow as various species watched in horror as the liquid headed straight for the labyrinth's main control interface. No, shouted several highly advanced civilizations in unison. The coffee splashed across the quantum hologram, creating what could only be described as a cascade of chaos. Sparks flew, probability fields fluctuated, and for a brief moment, everyone in the room existed in a superposition of panic and resignation. Then something impossible happened. The labyrinth, instead of shutting down or exploding, as several emergency protocols had predicted, began to pulse with new energy. The coffee, its molecular structure now quantum entangled with the puzzle's matrices, had created what Isabella would later term a caffeine-powered probability cascade. Oh, she said from her position on the floor, that's what it wanted all along. The holographic display shifted, twisted, and suddenly resolved itself into a configuration so elegant it brought tears to several mathematical eyes. The labyrinth, the greatest puzzle in known space, had been solved by what amounted to a coffee-powered accident. Silence fell over the chamber. Even the quantum observers seemed to hold their non-existent breath. Did you plan this? Fricks managed to ask, their tentacles twisting in confusion. Isabella laughed, still sitting on the floor. Plan? Nah. But you know what they say. Sometimes you have to spill some coffee to make an omelette. She paused. Or something like that. Idioms are hard when you're quantum entangled with caffeine. The gallery erupted into chaos. Several species began emergency philosophical debates about the nature of order versus chaos. The Silicon Sages initiated an immediate review of their entire problem-solving methodology. 3 members of the High Council had to be escorted out after beginning to glitch. But the solution, protested a senior theorist, their crystalline form clouding with confusion. It's so simple. Simple. Isabella was now examining the labyrinth's solved state while trying to clean coffee off her tablet. It's about as simple as explaining why humans invented thousands of words for throwing things, but still mostly just point at stuff and say that thing over there. Sometimes the most elegant solution is just embracing the chaos. Kit Fricks, reviewing the solution data, felt their worldview shifting. The answer had been there all along, hidden not by complexity, but by their own assumptions about how solutions should be found. You know what this reminds me of? Isabella mused, finally standing up and brushing off her clothes. That time humanity invented the microwave because someone noticed their chocolate bar melted near some radar equipment. Sometimes the best discoveries happen when you're not really trying to discover anything at all. As news of the solution spread across the galaxy, Caithrix made a note in the official record. The labyrinth, unsolved for 700 years, was finally conquered not through perfect order, but through perfect chaos. Perhaps there is a lesson in that for us all. Isabella, meanwhile, was already moving on to her next thought. Hey, has anyone ever tried applying the principles of lost sock probability to faster-than-light travel? No? Just me? Well, get ready for another interesting day. The galaxy would never be quite the same again. But then again, as humans were fond of saying, change is just chaos with better PR of the aftermath of what became known as the coffee incident, sent shockwaves through the galactic community. The Grand Council of Scientific Understanding had convened an emergency session to comprehend how their most complex puzzle had been solved by what appeared to be a caffeinated accident. The prestigious Hall of Infinite Knowledge was packed with representatives from every major species. Isabella sat in the center, still clutching her ever-present coffee cup, while holographic displays showed her solution from various dimensional perspectives. The gallery erupted in heated academic debate. Several species began emergency philosophical discussions about the nature of order versus chaos. A group of silicon sages had to be rebooted after their logic circuits overheated trying to follow Isabella's reasoning. Look here, she pointed excitedly to a particularly complex section of the labyrinth. This part isn't a barrier at all. It's more like those endless terms and conditions updates that nobody reads. It's not trying to stop you. It's just trying to bore you into giving up. Fricks found themselves drawn into her strange logic. But the quantum entanglement matrices are basically just like trying to coordinate a group project where nobody checks their emails, Isabella finished. Once you accept that nothing will work the way it's supposed to, everything starts making sense. As the second day drew to a close, Isabella had achieved something unprecedented. The labyrinth was beginning to respond to her chaos in ways it had never responded to order. Parts of its structure that had remained rigid for centuries were becoming fluid, adaptable. Tomorrow's the big day, she announced, packing up her unusual collection of tools. Bringing extra coffee. We're going to need it when we start applying the principles of procrastination to quantum mechanics. The observation gallery immediately began booking larger spaces for tomorrow's session. Caithrix, reviewing the day's data, realized that something extraordinary was happening. Isabella wasn't just attempting to solve the labyrinth. She was changing how everyone thought about problem-solving itself. As they prepared the evening reports, Caithrix added a personal note. Perhaps the greatest puzzle is not the labyrinth itself, but our assumption that order is the only path to understanding. The human's approach was chaos incarnate, but it was chaos with a pattern, like life itself. And tomorrow, that chaos would either crack a puzzle 700 years in the solving, or create the most spectacular failure the archives had ever seen. Either way, Caithrix reflected, it would certainly be interesting. The third day began with what Isabella called organized chaos at its finest. The observation gallery was now so packed that several species had to share dimensional spaces, leading to some rather awkward quantum overlaps. The High Council itself had dispatched observers, their formal robes rustling with barely contained anxiety. Isabella, running on what appeared to be her fifth cup of coffee, had transformed the testing chamber into something that looked like a cross between a university dorm during finals week and the aftermath of a minor explosion. Holographic displays showed everything from quantum calculations to cat videos to what she claimed was essential research into human dance moves. The problem with the labyrinth, she explained to nobody in particular while balancing a pen on her nose, is that everyone treats it like it's trying to be solved. But what if it's more like a teenager's room? The more you try to organize it, the more it resists. That's not how quantum mechanics works, protested a member of the Vegan Science Academy, their cybernetic implants sparking with irritation. Isn't it, though? Isabella spun in her chair, causing several highly advanced species to wince at the casual violation of professional decorum. Have you ever tried to find matching socks in a dryer? Quantum entanglement has nothing on that. Thrix watched as Isabella's seemingly random approaches continued to yield unprecedented results. The labyrinth's quantum matrices were responding to our chaos in ways that defied conventional understanding. It was as if the puzzle, after centuries of resisting logical attempts at solution, was actually enjoying the unpredictability. Look here, she pointed to a particularly complex section. Everyone assumes this part is a quantum lock mechanism, but it's really more like those automated customer service systems. It's not trying to keep you out, it's just really bad at giving directions. The breakthrough, when it came, was so perfectly human that several alien species would later refuse to believe it wasn't staged. Isabella, in her caffeine-fueled enthusiasm, had been attempting to demonstrate what she called the pizza delivery theory of quantum navigation when she tripped over her own untied shoelace. As she fell, she instinctively grabbed for support, her hand passing through 3 different holographic interfaces simultaneously. In the crystalline halls of the Galactic archives, Archivist First Class, Thrix watched the latest procession of would-be puzzle solvers leave in defeat. Their tentacles rippled with what might have been amusement. After 700 years, watching brilliant minds fail had become something of a spectator sport. The archive's legendary puzzle, known simply as the Labyrinth, had destroyed careers, shattered egos, and even driven a few particularly sensitive species to temporary madness. It sat innocently in the center of the testing chamber, a shimmering holographic construct that seemed to fold in on itself in ways that made most beings' sensory organs ache. Thrix's entertainment was interrupted by an unexpected notification. A new challenger had registered for an attempt, from Earth, of all places. The archivist's primary consciousness cluster throbbed with skepticism. Humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel a mere century ago, practically yesterday in galactic terms. Dr. Isabella Rodriguez stepped out of the transport pod, her dark eyes immediately drawn to the swirling hologram at the chamber's heart. She carried none of the usual equipment most challengers brought. No quantum computers, no probability engines, not even a basic dimensional analyzer. Instead, she clutched a battered tablet and what appeared to be an ancient earth beverage container labeled coffee. That's it. Thrix's translation matrix struggled to convey their incredulity. You intend to challenge the labyrinth with primitive digital devices and stimulants. Isabella grinned, running a hand through her curly hair. Don't forget the snacks. She pulled a crumpled bag from her jacket pocket. Can't solve impossible puzzles on an empty stomach. The archivist's tentacles twisted in what humans might interpret as a frown. Dr. Rodriguez, the labyrinth has defeated the finest minds in the galaxy. The hivemind of Betelgeuse VIA spent 3 decades attempting to map its outer layers alone. The silicon sages of Taas Ceti committed ritual deactivation after failing to resolve even its basic parameters. Sounds like they all took it too seriously, Isabella replied, already setting up her workspace in a way that made Cathrix's sense of order scream in protest. Sometimes you need to look at things sideways, or upside down, or while doing a handstand, though I wouldn't recommend that last one after 3 cups of coffee. The human proceeded to sprawl her materials across the pristine floor in what appeared to be random patterns. Cathrix watched in horror as she kicked off her shoes. Better thinking in socks, she explained, and began humming what she called my puzzle-solving playlist. The standard attempt period is 1 galactic week. Cathrix informed her, certain this would be yet another brief entry in the labyrinth's long history of failures. Cool, Isabella responded, not looking up from her tablet where she appeared to be, playing a game. Hey, quick question. Has anyone ever tried treating this thing like a massive game of Tetris played in 4 dimensions while thinking about pizza delivery routes? Cathrix's universal translator actually glitched trying to process that question. What? Never mind, Isabella waved dismissively, pulling up what appeared to be a map of her home city's subway system alongside complex quantum equations. Just thinking out loud. You know, this puzzle's structure kind of reminds me of trying to figure out which streaming service has the show I want to watch. The archivist began to compose the standard failure report in their mind, certain they would need it within the hour. But as they watched Isabella work, something strange began to happen. Our apparently random approaches started creating patterns that shouldn't have been possible. The labyrinth's outer layers, which had resisted mapping for centuries, began responding to our chaotic methodology.